Welcome back to another fireside chat here at the FreightWaves Net Zero Carbon Summit. Our focus today all about getting closer to those sustainability goals as an industry, really just as a population as a whole. Very excited to bring you this fireside chat with Chetan Marichli, who is the CEO and co-founder over at Locomation. Locomation is a company that I've been watching since I started here at FreightWaves, and everything that they do just kind of awe inspires me a little bit when it comes to moving the industry forward from goals, sustainability, all of the above. So, Chetan, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you as part of the Net Zero Carbon Summit.
Thank you so much, Kaylee, and thanks for having me as well as for your very, very kind words.
So, for maybe our folks who aren't so familiar with Locomation, give us just a little bit of background about the company, what you guys do, how you kind of started this entire idea.
Locomation is a Pittsburgh-based autonomous technology company founded in 2018 by myself and four other robotics experts from Carnegie Mellon University's National Robotics Engineering Center. We all come from the AI and robotics background. We've fielded, deployed probably more autonomous vehicles than any other team in the world. And at Locomation, we are on track to be the first company to deploy autonomous trucking technology safely, legally, and routinely in commercial operations at scale across the United States. When we first started, we saw the most practical path to fully autonomous operations is using existing AV technology to augment rather than to replace or displace human drivers. We focused on freight trucking and went after its biggest pain points, in particular, the need for more supply chain capacity and lower carbon emissions. As we all know, the demand for freight is just going up, and pandemic accelerated everything by probably 5 years or so, but the trends were going up anyways. And the capacity is always in a crunch mode. So that's what we are doing at Locomation in a nutshell. Of course, we can expand on every point substantially.
So today's summit, we're focused all on kind of moving the industry forward from a greener standpoint, becoming more greener, becoming more sustainable. And to understand that, we need to understand where the industry is at as a baseline. So let's talk a little bit about greenhouse gas emissions and how big of a player they are coming directly from trucking.
Excellent question, and the situation is really dire there. Most people don't know the numbers, but they are quite astounding. About one third of all greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation. A About 80%, a little bit over 80% of all those come from road transportation, and about quarter of the road transportation greenhouse gas emissions come from medium and heavy duty trucking. So that is where we are focusing on. That is the vertical that's rapidly growing due to the recent explosion in e-commerce and advanced manufacturing techniques. So Locomation's technology and services platforms are designed to deliver safe autonomous solutions such as two truck convoys, as I mentioned, as a starting point on our path to autonomous future, and freight optimization. And our overall product offering looks to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by a whopping 22%, directly speaking to these quite high numbers that are coming directly from the heavy duty trucks.
So I was recently at the Transportation Intermediaries Conference in San Diego and watched a panel all about the future of autonomous vehicles. And I'm actually moderating a panel this upcoming week at AUVSI, once again about commercialization of autonomy. And in this space, both the panel that I went and the panel that I'm planning on moderating really touched on this efficiency and the moderation of greenhouse gases and the savings that you can get from deploying autonomous technology. Can you talk about how that autonomous technology truly works when it comes to a reduction of greenhouse gas emissions? Is it just more efficient in the accelerating and braking process? Therefore, there's not as many emissions coming out of the truck. Tell me a little bit about that.
There are three main contributors to greenhouse gas emission reductions through the use of Locomation's autonomous technology, and these are the top contributors. The first one is in our convoy, human guided autonomous convoy concept. there are two trucks following each other very closely on the highway. And two trucks following each other closely ends up creating a drafting and aerodynamic efficiencies so that both trucks actually end up saving roughly 8 to 10% of fuel because of that. That's what's happening on the road. Of course, being able to drive more gently, being able to center the lane, accelerating gently, braking properly, these all contribute, but none of them contribute up to like 8 or 10%. These are nice conveniences. The other parts that our technology contributes to that's super important is from our freight optimization and scheduling backend with the help of proper optimization and scheduling of the trucks, the drivers, the trailers, the loads, we are able to reduce idling significantly because the trucks don't basically spend overnight at the rest stops idling or don't spend hours and hours idling, waiting for a load. Everything is scheduled in a very optimized way. And we also reduce and, in some cases, eliminate empty and deadhead miles. So these three big buckets combined give us around 22% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And this number is, we didn't come up with that number. A third party independent climate scientist organization uh, ran this process quantifying what is the footprint, what is the impact of Locomation's technology in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. And they came up with this number based on the data and the benchmarks that they came up with. And then their findings were also independently reviewed by another group of climate scientists, according to the climate protocol spearheaded by European Union and now being increasingly adopted by United States.
So you mentioned the no empty miles, reducing the deadhead, which Convoy, who is a sponsor of our net zero carbon show, they're very, very passionate about that no miles promise, about that empty miles reduction, right? So let's talk a little bit about that fact when it comes to reducing those empty miles and load planning using the locomotion technology that you're mentioning. So not only is it the AV, the assisted or the following driver technology, you're also talking about building in from truly start to finish of your shipment, making it efficient from that process. Why was that really important to you guys to not only take the driving aspect, but also take everything end to end?
Yeah, it is almost a one-two punch. So first of all, you need to rethink the way loads are scheduled and optimized and assets are allocated in order to deploy autonomous assets, be it a convoy or be it a solo driverless in the future, optimally. Because autonomous trucks will not going to be a true drop-in replacement to anything and everything human drivers are doing today for a really long time, perhaps ever. So we need to change the way we are thinking about how the supply chain, how the operations, how the load planning will work in order to deploy, in order to get the most ROI out of this expansive autonomous assets. So you need to do that, and that's one of the big motivators of why we came up with our proprietary optimization system. The second part is there are so many inefficiencies coming from the traditional way, especially the over-the-road long-haul operations operate today. And if you can characterize what are the bottlenecks, if you can characterize what are the inefficiencies, you can actually do some process improvements for better operational excellence there. And that also goes through, interestingly, scheduling and optimization methods and how you approach these. So if you actually take a look at how can we improve the existing operations and how can we prepare the supply chain for better deployment of autonomous assets, there's a significant overlap. It's not 100%, but there's a significant overlap. So we are basically bringing our magic sauce in the freight optimization and planning part to both prepare, both gain benefits from optimizing the supply chain today with the manual operations of our customers. At the same time, we are preparing them frictionlessly for deploying autonomous assets when we start deploying our autonomous trucks. So for us, that makes perfect sense. And for our customers, it makes also perfect sense because we are not just looking for a relatively small near-term gain. We are starting with a near-term gain. We are connecting it to a much larger gain with the introduction of our autonomous technology.
So long haul trucking and load planning is kind of that ripe fruit for the taking when it comes to deploying this autonomous space, right? And it's predictable, it makes sense. You're running long miles, it's hard to fill those seats with drivers who are experienced. So it makes sense to kind of build that in. And then, of course, the carbon savings is part of the bonus plan when it comes to that. Let's talk a little bit about the last mile, though. When it comes to last mile deliveries, you see a ton of carbon impacts. You see a lot of idling, you see a lot of stop and starts, a lot of short haul routes around cities. You see trucks just kind of chilling in parking lots sometimes. How does Locomation work for a handoff with the last mile? You guys aren't necessarily involved in the actual delivery space of the last mile, but how are you guys working in partnership to hand off and to take kind of your benefits and push them further down the supply chain?
It is, in some sense, similar to some of the optimization approaches that we are using for the line haul element in the long haul part. It is, it again is driven by having an aggregate view of what else is happening in the local delivery or the local and regional activities. What needs to happen between the real origin and where the handoff is going to happen for the autonomous, and vice versa. When the autonomous assets will deliver the load, and then there is another couple of miles, couple of tens of miles, that handoff happens. What's gonna happen in that last stretch? If you can look at these processes in different buckets, regional buckets and line haul buckets, and use again the secret sauce on each bucket properly, you can actually mix and match and line up and schedule for the optimal handling of the first and last miles, as well as the optimal handling of the line haul. So there are by properly specializing the local deliveries and line haul deliveries and coordinating them among themselves, maybe that's a good summary of it. You can actually draw benefits from both the local activities and the line haul activities.
It's a bit of a delicate dance, and each little piece works together in its own way.
It's a gigantic machine with a lot of gears turning. There's a lot of uncertainty. You have to come up with robust enough optimization methods to handle the unexpected. What if a driver gets sick, or what if a load is not ready, or what if there's road work and you have to reroute, and what if this and what if that? There are a number of scenarios that you need to be prepared for, and there are probably also other scenarios that you don't even know, but they might happen. So you need to have a wild card response to truly unexpected.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about AV and EV, or alternative fuels. I feel like sometimes those are kind of talked about in their own separate entities, in their own little buckets of secret sauce, if you will. But let's talk about combining those two into the potential for one. Or how do you see the future of autonomous vehicles interacting with the future of alternative fuel vehicles or electric vehicles?
But there will be a significant overlap and joining forces for sure. When I'm not going to say if, because I think that's going to happen, but when alternate fuels become viable for heavy duty trucking operations, and some of them, like better electric heavy duty trucks, are starting to appear. They don't have longer ranges that are required by the long haul operations, but they might be suitable for local deliveries. However, one important thing that needs to be solved, or that needs to be addressed there, is the duty cycle. So any new technology, initially at least, is a little bit more expensive, and it increases the upfront investment from the fleet's point of view. So uh, it, those assets need to be utilized as much of the time as possible in order to get a better return on investment. So ideally, we look to utilize all of our trucks, all of the trucks with our technology on them, at least 20 hours, ideally up to 22 hours a day. So effectively, your pre-trip and post-trip inspection, refueling, and maybe super light maintenance, the assets should be on the road and doing revenue generating work all the time. And that is a little bit of a challenge, at least in the foreseeable future, for the alternate fuel. So for the battery electric trucks, first you don't have the range that's required for the long haul, and it takes longer to charge a truck. Fuel cell or hydrogen is very attractive, very interesting, but we don't have the infrastructure for it. We don't have the infrastructure for charging heavy duty trucks at scale either. So what if we have thousands, tens of thousands of heavy duty trucks? So I think that's going to happen. It's going to happen a little bit slower than most people anticipated because of the infrastructure requirements and the chicken and egg that you have, the dilemma that you have to navigate there. But the good news is that our autonomous technology is completely agnostic of the powertrain. We can basically take any powertrain available to us today and we can make it better. And for if we are talking about completely green fuel sources like green electric and green hydrogen, these are also not guaranteed to be super green. We will always be interested in spending less energy. So our 20% reduction in energy consumption will always be an added benefit. And as long as we have to stick with the fossil fuels, significant reduction in the GHG will also be very important. But we are ready. We are waiting for the powertrain technology to develop.
And Tim, last question for you. What do you guys see as the both near and far term future for Locomation? Where are you guys going this year? Where are you guys going the next 5 years?
So this year is all about finalizing our technology development so we can get to the final stretch of validation and look to launch commercially next year. So it's right around the corner for us. We are very, very excited about it. So we are deeply focused on just let's build this product, validate that because we have customers waiting for us. We can't wait to make their operations better and help them become a better version of themselves. In the next 5 years, we will look to expand on our initial launch with operating on more routes as well as operating with different flavors of our technology. So we are starting with what we call autonomous relay convoy, a two-truck, two-driver convoy system. Right after that, we will look to launch our drone follower, which is a two-truck, one-driver convoy system. And in the next 5 years, we look to deploy tens of thousands of those convoys all across the United States as we use the learnings and the real world data from these convoys to improve and advance our autonomous technology for inching towards solo driverless. Thank you so much, Kaylee. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you can stay tuned to us here on FreightWaves for the rest of our Net Zero Carbon Summit. It's great to have all of you viewers here as well. If you're watching us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on tv.freightwaves.com, we appreciate it so much. But still head over to live.freightwaves.com and get registered for this event through our events platform. There's still plenty of opportunity to network with our sponsors and with our demo providers, network with your other conference attendees as well. We've got tons more great fireside chats on the way. If you miss any of today's content, it will all be up on demand on tv.freightwaves.com. Stay tuned.